Yeah, welcome back to the channel. AJ Mahara here. Subject of borderline personality disorder. But guess what? Not just all about women. Because, I think it's being overstated on the internet in general. The percentages now of diagnoses, which maybe there still are more women diagnosed with BPD, but men are catching up. So there are, who knows the stats, right? There's tons of women who've been with a borderline man, and they're going through a lot of similar things to what men have been through with a borderline woman. So remember again, not all people with BPD are the same. Please remember again that the person that hurt you or beyond is what should really be important to you and is what you should really work from and within in your own healing and recovery journey. So in this video, I just want to say, with all the sorting around the internet on this, there is misinformation and there's also disinformation. And I think a lot of that disinformation comes from one Sam Vaknin. And I'm going to continue to maintain that based on not only my own research, but the reality that what he's talking about, borderlines as failed narcissists, secondary psychopathy, and borderline personality in what? Women only. Again, this was based on, I don't know what he based what he said on, but it's based on a couple of studies that were done by the American Psychiatric Association, and they are not replicated studies. They're not scientific conclusions. They go in with a biased agenda with Big Pharma. And when they address this BPDs, the female variant of ASPD, they don't come up with any evidence whatsoever. They have flawed ideology at best. So now, rather than understanding that there's for some women, for some men with BPD, not all, there's a smaller percentage. Really, believe me, it's still a smaller percentage, will have that ninth trait. And predominant in the ninth trait is the transient psychotic episode, okay? So it has nothing to do. A lot of people, I've been reading some articles on different websites. In particular, a lot of people are talking about this in a lot of different ways, but like on blogs. I'm not talking about YouTubers. I haven't watched any videos on that lately in this area. But they're talking about how many people are sort of mixing up psychosis with psychopathy. So anyway, the main point of the message here, regardless of what you think or what your experience was or how you experienced a man with BPD or a woman with BPD in your life, I think what's really important for people to realize is that there's just this amateur psychoanalysis going on all over the internet. I mean, aside from professionals like myself, but, people explaining, people talking about their own experience. Well, that's valid, right? But then everybody's trying to become, like, they take half of a slice of a piece of information and forward it as like it's gospel and it's the way it is. And then people jump on that bandwagon, of course, because they're hurting. But here's the thing. You really need to think about if you're the ex of somebody with BPD, or you're an on again, off again, or you're not yet out of the relationship, or you don't know where it's at because maybe you just got ghosted and you don't know if they're coming back. Maybe they have a pattern. There are lots of people with BPD, men and women, that don't fit these patterns, by the way. So differences, again, that matter to a lot of people, but not to people that have experienced what the, quote, most popular narrative is these days, which I don't, doubt at all. It's just that it's ever changing. So the main message here is most people who get into relationships, whether female with a male BPD or male with a BPD male with a BPD woman, or same-sex relationships, that the more you focus on trying to become an amateur psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever that's about, the more that you are doing yourself a disservice. So there's a need to understand, and it's getting very fervent out there. There's really fringes to it, okay? So I don't think every woman or every man who's the ex of somebody with BPD is in that sort of, when I say fringe, I don't mean to be insulting. It's just a smaller group of really fervent people. It's almost like a political divide, if you will. They're just so going to, keep pounding on misinformation and disinformation. And it's because it serves them and because they think that that's helping their pain. But you know what? It doesn't help people's pain. And I have over 30 plus years of experience working with clients. And I can tell you that from that experience and all those years, that this is really, complicated, difficult, and timely. It is not short recovery processes after these relationships. And no matter if they were the woman or man with BPD was more severely affected or not, or what you might believe about them, or what is floated by the pseudoscience of the American Psychiatric Association, which it is pseudoscience. It is not proven evidentiary anything. So, and I'm not here to defend people with BPD or poor behavior or worse, okay? But people who are exes now need to go full no contact, need to get into therapy, need to get into your own healing and recovery journey, because the more you focus on, is BPD this and is it that and is it the other thing, which is very highly individual at the very least. And then when it is this and that, or this and or that and something, it's going to be the lowest percentage of people. But that doesn't mean with BPD, but it doesn't, men and women, but it doesn't mean it isn't a lot of people. And here's the other thing I want to say to you really gently today. So continued focus on the borderline or your ex or a narcissist or the cluster B. Continued focus on that person or all of them, or the globalization of the vilification of all of them, when maybe some of them have more earned that distinction, is going to block your recovery. It's going to prolong your rumination. It's going to prolong your pain. It's going to make everything that you're going through right now just exponentially worse or more difficult to change and to start to get your feet back on the ground and to start to learn more about yourself, because this focus is not a healthy focus. And then I would also just like to say to people with codependency, when you get into these relationships and you don't know what's going to happen in the beginning, right? Absolutely not. And people with BPD don't even know either. So like I said in my last video, that unconscious setup that happens between the two and the unhealthy bonded, whatever, it's not a fit. But here's what keeps a lot of people with codependency hurting longer, hurting deeper, not being able to get into healing and recovery, being blocked, suffering immensely more after the relationship, which, yes, to a degree, that's going to happen for many reasons. But what keeps people with codependency, actually, you're increasing your own suffering, I'm sure not on purpose, by the focus on the cluster B, and more to the point, the vilification of them. I'm not saying that you should be happy about what they did, or that what they did was okay, or that, they shouldn't be held accountable, because, but if they can't take accountability, so lack of closure and a plethora of other issues. But the more you focus on anything to do with them, what about you? And the other thing for codependents to think about too is, and I mean this really gently, because we're not trying to take responsibility away from, the ex BPD, female or male, whatever the case was in your life. But people with codependency have to look at their responsibility, I think, much sooner, and it's very painful and difficult. So what I help clients do, as well as heal from these relationships, as well as talk about and learn about their ex with BPD and that individual presentation, because they're not all the same. I'm going to keep saying that because it's true. So you need to take your responsibility as a codependent. I think a lot of people would benefit if they could do that much more quickly without the focus on, the ex, because it's not that you're not responsible for what they did to you at all. Okay, not saying that. But the people that get hurt the most are the people that stay the longest. And this brings up a whole dilemma, right? Because I'm not here, this is not a blame you message at all. People get stuck in these relationships, in these unhealthy bonds, and there is a plethora of reasons for that, and you need to deconstruct that in therapy afterwards and understand it. But your understanding is not going to come from the misinformation and the disinformation out there. And a lot of people enjoy that stuff because it speaks to the victim narrative, to just put it mildly. It does. It speaks to the part of men or women who are exes of those with BPD and the anger they still have, and understandably so. But people with codependency need to take more responsibility, and this message is maybe even more aimed at people who are still in the relationship with the borderline, male or female, that you need to take more responsibility for getting into therapy right away. Why? Because I work with a lot of clients who need to strategize and work through how they're going to leave the borderline. Never mind if the borderline left you. Like, that's another, that's the other side. And that happens a lot. But people need to realize with their codependency that what the relationship you're in and that longing for and that codependent denial that they're not who you really fell in love with is what causes people even to be, how can I put it, to be in the line of the borderline's fire longer. So what I'm trying to say there is they're responsible for what they do, but you're responsible for how long they get to do it, if that makes any sense. And I'm just, trying to keep it real here to help people heal. It's not a, it's my intent is a compassionate message to, again, try to help people who are stuck, to motivate them. So many people have said in live streams of mine recently, a couple of people have said these exact words. I want to leave him, or I want to leave her, but I can't. And then there can be a myriad of circumstances under the umbrella of I can't. And then there's family members going through this. There's people who are where the children now are the adult children of a BPD mother or an NPD mother. And trust me, I had a comorbid BPD NPD mother. It's like not having a mother. It's like having a worst enemy in the form of a mother. And so adult children have a lot of healing to do too. And again, really, across all relationship types, people with codependency, people who've been hurt by these people in whatever ways, to whatever degrees, in whatever relationship type, you need to take responsibility for you right now, today. Go no contact, or extremely low contact, depending on the relationship type. Get yourself into therapy, and I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, and realize that what they do is inexcusable, but all of it isn't conscious. It depends. It's different in many cases. And realize that you're continuing to watch video after video with often misinformation and disinformation in them, and then it just winds you up again. And then you're trying to diagnose, well, is it this, is it that, plus BPD? It's not going to help you. It really isn't. And maybe there's a small group of people that find that helps, but it's really counterintuitive. So again, taking responsibility to learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can, but not to amateur diagnoses and whatever is going on and the complexity of it all. No, just to understand enough to get proactive and get out of the relationship. Because the longer you stay there, which myriad of reasons again, I say with great compassion and empathy for you, the more you're going to get hurt, and the more difficult becomes your recovery. So are there a lot of people with codependency out there right now who have suffered even more than they otherwise might have? Which, again, the people at BPD have the responsibility for what they do. But yes, because people aren't leaving the relationships. Yes, because people aren't addressing their codependency. Yes, because codependents aren't taking care of themselves. Yes, because codependence, repetition, compulsion, externalizing out that you need to get needs met in an unconscious manner, you're not aware of it, that weren't met in your childhood. and you keep going back and you keep going back for more. It doesn't mean you should get more. They're still responsible for that part. But what about what you can do for yourself today if you haven't already done it? And if you are no contact and you are working in therapy, then what are you doing focusing on information, misinformation, disinformation, the vilification of primarily borderline women, but maybe somewhere borderline men, because the vilification isn't your way out. Vilify them if that's what you need to do, but just know it's a block to healing and recovery. So take care.